I want to take a little passage from Genesis 15, 1 to 3, and it says, "After these things, the word of the Lord came to Abraham in a vision, saying, 'Do not fear, Abram. I am a shield to you. Your reward shall be very great.' Abram said, 'O Lord, what will you give me, since I am childless, and an heir of my house is Eleazar of Damascus?' And Abram said, 'Since you have given no offspring to me, no one born in my house is my heir.'" You know, I want to ask you a question or two. Is life not working out as you hoped? Is your faith just barely hanging on? If you're struggling with doubt, it's time for an honest conversation with God, just like Abraham did. Why? Because faith isn't the absence of doubt, it's learning to express that doubt to God. So, what can we learn from Abraham about dealing with doubt in our lives? You see, he left his homeland and boldly stepped out in faith to doubting God so much that he veered off track and took matters into his own hands. You see, Abraham was all over the place in his faith journey, just like a lot of us are sometimes. But there are several key things that Abraham did that I want to show you. Number one, he let his doubts out. You see, Abraham expressed his doubts, and God wasn't disappointed or angry. In fact, God responded. And that's what you and I are called to do in Jesus Christ. It's not a problem to have doubts, or it's not a sin to have doubts either. It's not a problem to even question. It's a problem when we don't voice those doubts to God. Abraham believed in God, so he got honest with God. And number two, you have to choose faith. You see, Abraham chose to believe, and Abraham was made right with God because of his faith, not because of his actions. You see, in the New Testament, we see a parallel to Christ. It is through faith in Christ that you and I are saved. Abraham chose to believe even when things just didn't make sense, and we're called to do the same thing. Number three is to surrender. When Abraham expressed those doubts, God reassured him by establishing with him a covenant, an irrevocable contract, in other words. And that's found in Genesis 15, 18 to 21. All the responsibility for the fulfillment of this covenant was with God. All Abraham had to do was trust that God would come through it. In the same way, salvation from sin and death and hell is all up to Jesus. It's not up to us. We're just called to believe in Christ, just as Abraham believed in the Lord. So, here's my closing questions. What will you do when life circumstances raise doubts in you? Are you going to ignore them, or are you going to confront them? Bring them before God. You see, God's not afraid of your doubts. And, really, you shouldn't be afraid of them either.